I took notes for this video. I have 2 whole pages of notes, and you guys are not ready for me to be this ready for a video. I assure you. Hey everybody, my name is Sam. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing a video that was requested 2 fucking months ago. I'm finally getting to it. I swear I listen when you guys ask me for stuff. But this came up in my first vlog for the Tome Infinity and Beyond readathon, where I mentioned that The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers is the closest thing I could think of to a perfect science fiction book, and I asked if you guys wanted to know what that means, and you said yes. So here we are, talking about science fiction. What else is new? So there are 5 main things that I look for. That's not to say that I don't enjoy science fiction books that don't meet all of these qualifications. Sometimes I just want to read about like killer fucking plants, or alien invasions, or random unknown diseases, and that's totally fine. But if I'm going to rate a science fiction book 5 stars and give it super high praise and talk about it repeatedly over and over again until you're all sick of hearing me talk, it's usually going to meet these 5 requirements, or some combination of them. And this is also gonna maybe kind of sort of serve as a recommendations video, although realistically any of these specific examples that I give in this video are books that I've already talked about at least 12 times on this channel, most likely more. But, you know, it'll give me a chance to tell you to read stuff again that I've already told you to read, so that's something. Right? Okay, so let's just get started. I took notes for this video, and I'm mostly just gonna be reading them to you because I've tried filming this like 3 times now and I couldn't make sentences make sense without reading notes, so we're just gonna do that. So if I'm looking down, sorry about it, but the information will be good. The first thing that I look for a 5-star science fiction book is fleshed out and believable characters. Honestly, this is the first thing I look for if I'm going to rate any book 5 stars, but I find it especially important in science fiction or fantasy books. And it's especially important if the book isn't set on Earth or is just generally dealing with aliens more so than humans. Because when you're reading science fiction, you're already suspending your disbelief in a lot of ways, and it's especially true in non-Earth settings. So it's really important that the characters feel real enough to keep the story grounded. Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and Descender do a fantastic job of this, and that's why I will harp on you guys to read Descender until we're all old and gray. I don't need to harp on you to read Long Way to a Small Angry Planet as much because like 90% of BookTube has already talked about that book. But, you know, if you haven't heard anybody talk about it, you should read that one too. The second thing I'm going to talk about is in the event that a book is Earth-based or in a more familiar setting, I tend to find the characters slightly less essential to my enjoyment, though strong characters still help and are still a good thing. But in that situation, the plot needs to be strong enough to make the book compelling without well-developed characters. I also find that plot-heavy science fiction works best in a shorter format, be that a book that's under 200 pages, a short story, a novella, a graphic novel, anything like that, just because I don't have a desire to read plot twist after plot twist after plot twist for like 600 pages. But like 180 pages, that I can do. Most vintage science fiction tends to be really plot heavy and the characters tend to be somewhat flat and interchangeable, but the books are generally under 200 pages, and so I'm definitely more okay with it. The best example I have of science fiction, like plot-driven science fiction done very, very well without memorable characters is literally anything written by John Wyndham. You guys know how much I love John Wyndham. I've talked about his books constantly on this channel, but to be completely honest, aside from The Chrysalids, most of his books, I couldn't tell you a single character's name after having read it, because the characters are just really not the driving force behind his books. But his plots, and therefore his books overall, stick with you for a very, very long time after reading. The third thing that I look for in a science fiction book is a vivid setting. Most people, when you think of a vivid setting, you're thinking of like the imagery, the description of how things look, and that's not really what I'm referring to. Being able to visualize stuff is really cool, but I'm mostly referring to a solidly built world or galaxy or society. If it's made clear to me as a reader how the society functions and what the class structure is or what the norm is for the characters, my imagination is likely to fill in all the physical details on its own. I also prefer to get this information kind of organically, and by that, it could mean a few different things. So the most common and kind of best way to approach this can be through a character's eyes when they're dropped into a new situation. So this is done really well in Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, where Rosemary, one of our main characters, is going from living planet-side to living out in the open in space, and she's kind of learning the rules of how that works and how to kind of navigate her new normal. And as a result, you as the reader are learning it through her eyes. Another book that does this really well is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where you have a character who is from Earth and didn't even realize that like space travel was a thing, and he's suddenly in space learning the rules, and you as a reader are learning them along with him. Another way the author can handle this is to just kind of drop you into the middle of the action and let the details fill in around you. This isn't done as often, and it's a lot harder to do well. I recently read Dinosaur Planet by Anne McCaffrey, or I tried to read it, and it was done this way where like Anne McCaffrey just dropped you into the action and you were just kind of supposed to catch up with where the characters were, and it was honestly just confusing in that situation. So I ended up DNFing that book. But when it's done well, it's done really well. The best example I have of this being done is in Futuristic Violence and Fancy Suits by David Wong, where you are just, like, you're dropped in seriously as the action is starting to happen. The character's already aware of how the society works, everybody else is, but you as a reader just pick it up as you go, and it happens really fast, you don't even realize it's happening, and that's awesome. What I don't enjoy as a reader is info dumps about the setting. So I don't want the action to pause so that the author can explain to me as a reader what's going on, basically, and why. The only time that I think that it can sort of work where you get like information in chunks like that is if the book is framed as a character telling a story in kind of flashbacks to another character. And a book that I've read recently where this is done, and I think done effectively, is Bad Monkeys by Matt Ruff. But most of the time, I'm really not into info dumps. The fourth thing, and this is really fucking nitpicky, and I can admit that, is I don't like Earth-specific language if the story isn't set on Earth or in a post-Earth but still human-based society. So this is especially true of like religious language, references to God or the soul or anything of that nature. The author could just as easily like make up new words or a new religion, or just replace things like oh my God with oh my stars. It's a very simple sub and makes a big difference to me personally. That said, because I know this is nitpicky, this isn't like a deal breaker for me, but those little language choices can definitely sometimes take you out of a story, and it can be a little bit distracting and feel a little bit lazy, at least to me. So whenever I notice that an author takes the time to find an alternate way to express what they're trying to say, I always really appreciate it and am more likely to give that book a high rating. And the final, and honestly one of the most important things with a science fiction book, is if it can call real world issues into question or make you think. I personally am of the opinion that horror and sci-fi fantasy books are great vehicles for exploring kind of the big questions and normalizing things that honestly should be better normalized in our society, like gender identity and racial issues. Long Way to a Small Angry Planet has characters from all different cultures that are all different, essentially races, religions, various gender identities, and it's all talked about as if it's totally normal, and I think that's fucking fantastic. Other things that I really enjoy are like sci-fi or horror books that make you kind of ask bigger questions, like in Frankenstein, where it kind of makes you think, What is it that makes someone a monster? There are also a lot of vintage science fiction books that were responses to societal issues at the time. It's taking a genre that could just be fun and using it as a way to kind of turn the lens inward. That makes sense, right? I'm not just like crazy. I mean, I am, but I'm not. Those are my 5 big things that I look at when I'm rating a science fiction book, and if it meets at least 4 of those requirements, I'm much more likely to give it a 5-star rating and highly recommend it to all of you fine people. Let me know if this was helpful at all to you. I honestly don't know if it was, or if I was just rambling for like fucking 10 minutes or what the fuck ever. Talk to me in the comments and stuff. Have a great day. Bye.